You know what's wild? Right now, as you're watching this video, there's a decent chance you're carrying around DNA from a species that went extinct 40,000 years ago. And not just any species. We're talking about what might be the most metal group of humans to ever walk the planet, Neanderthals. These weren't your average early humans stumbling around trying to figure out fire. No. Neanderthals were built different, like genuinely superhuman in ways that would make modern athletes weep. We're talking about a species that could bench press weight that would crush most gym bros, survive injuries that would absolutely end anyone today, and hunt megafauna with nothing but wooden spears and pure audacity. So buckle up, because today we're diving deep into exactly why Neanderthals were legitimate freaks of nature, and why if they walked into a modern gym or MMA ring, we'd all be in serious trouble. Let's start with the most obvious thing, their physical build. Because when I say Neanderthals were built different, I mean it literally. Picture this. You're walking through Ice Age Europe, and you spot a Neanderthal from a distance. Your first thought might be, that person's kind of short. And you'd be right. On average, Neanderthals stood about 14 centimeters shorter than modern humans. That's roughly 5.5 inches for my Americans out there. The tallest Neanderthal we've ever found, a specimen called Amud 1, was only about 5'10", not exactly towering. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite being shorter, the average male Neanderthal weighed around 183 pounds, while females clocked in at about 146 pounds. That made them a solid 20% heavier than the average Homo sapien of similar height. So what gives? Were they just chunky? Oh no, my friend. This is where the freak show truly begins. Neanderthals had skeletons that were absolutely ridiculous, and I mean that in the most scientific way possible. Every single bone in their body was thicker, denser, and more robust than ours. In some cases, their bones were literally twice as dense as modern human bones. Their shoulders, massive. Their femurs, tree trunks. Their chest, a literal barrel. Their kneecaps, their arms, their everything. It was all supersized and reinforced like they were preparing for war 24/7, which, to be fair, they kind of were. Scientists agree that this wasn't just for show. This bone structure strongly suggests that Neanderthals were packing serious muscle mass. We're talking about a species that even the average individual would have been significantly stronger than a modern human athlete. But why were they built like this? Well, it all comes down to how they hunted. While our Homo sapien ancestors were perfecting throwing spears and ranged weapons, Neanderthals looked at that strategy and said, nah, I'd rather get up close and personal. Their hunting tactic was what researchers call close-quarter confrontation, which is a fancy way of saying they ran up to giant prehistoric animals and stabbed them with massive spears while standing right next to them. And we're not talking about hunting rabbits or deer here. Neanderthals regularly took down woolly rhinoceroses, horses, straight-tusked elephants, and yes, woolly mammoths. You know, those elephant-sized beasts covered in thick fur and sporting massive tusks that could impale you faster than you could say bad idea. That was just Tuesday for a Neanderthal. This hunting style explains the Popeye-like arms found on many Neanderthal skeletons. Years of wielding heavy spears with violent force literally shaped their bones and muscles into weapons themselves. Their arms showed extreme asymmetry, one arm significantly more developed than the other from repeatedly thrusting spears with devastating power. But the skeleton is only part of the story. According to research, Neanderthals likely had hormone levels that were through the roof compared to modern humans. One study suggests they were naturally pumped full of hormones that contributed to massive muscle growth and incredible feats of strength. We're talking about a species that could carry 50 pounds of meat for 30 miles. That's like walking 138 laps around the soccer field while hauling half your body weight. Now here's where it gets really crazy. Scientists who study Neanderthal anatomy believe that if they were alive today, a male Neanderthal could bench press around 500 pounds without any training whatsoever. Let that sink in. 500 pounds with zero gym time. Female Neanderthals, they'd be pushing 350 pounds. And just for context, 2/3 of that weight would be considered elite-level strength by modern powerlifting standards. Their short, compact builds weren't a disadvantage, they were a feature. That body type is actually optimal for generating raw power, which is why modern powerlifters often have similar proportions. Now, you might be thinking all this strength and power is cool, but could they actually take a hit? Oh boy, could they ever. Here's a stat that's absolutely bonkers. Systematic analysis of Neanderthal skeletons shows that between 79 and 94% showed evidence of healed trauma. These weren't paper cuts. We're talking about blunt force fractures, traumatic amputations, and injuries that would hospitalize someone for months today. There's one particular elderly Neanderthal whose skeleton tells a story that's straight out of a horror movie. During his younger years, this dude lost his entire right arm, damaged his left collarbone, got smashed in the face so badly that he went blind in one eye, and his ears so thoroughly destroyed that bone material grew over his ear canals, rendering him completely deaf. And you know what's the craziest part? He survived all of this and lived to old age. This man was blind in one eye, deaf in both ears, missing an arm, and he still made it to elderly status in the Ice Age. That's not just tough, that's a different species of resilience. But wait, there's more. According to one study, nearly 74% of Neanderthals showed evidence of surviving violent animal encounters. Not just any encounters, attacks from the prehistoric heavy hitters. 21% survived big cat attacks, 17% survived wolf encounters, and 36% survived bear attacks. And here's the kicker. Scientists don't think these animals were trying to eat the Neanderthals. They think the animals were trying to defend themselves during Neanderthal attacks. These absolute mad lads were regularly getting mauled by predators who were just trying to get away. Even their skin was adapted for this lifestyle. Genetic analysis shows Neanderthals had genes associated with thickened skin, nails, and hair. Basically, natural armor to help them cope with getting constantly battered and bruised. Okay, so they were strong and durable, but what about endurance? Here's where things get really interesting. Neanderthals had barrel chests that accommodated wider rib cages and significantly larger lungs. On average, their lung capacity was 20% greater than ours, but some exceptional individuals blow that average out of the water. There's a specimen called Kabara 2, a male whose lungs could hold approximately 9 liters of air. That's 40% more than the average modern man. To put that in perspective, until very recently, the largest lung capacity ever recorded in a modern athlete was only 8.5 liters. Their noses were also massive, long and wide to accommodate this incredible air intake. In fact, Neanderthals could move air through their respiratory system 100% faster than any modern human. Double the speed. That's not a typo. Why do they need all this oxygen processing power? Two main reasons. First, their heavier, more muscular bodies required more fuel. Second, they lived in extremely cold climates, and animals in cold environments typically evolve faster metabolic rates to compensate for heat loss. This brings us to their absolutely insane caloric needs. With all this muscle, bone density, and metabolic activity, Neanderthals needed fuel. A lot of fuel. Researchers estimate that an individual Neanderthal needed between 4,500 and 6,700 calories every single day just to maintain their body. For comparison, the average modern human needs around 2,000 to 2,500 calories. Neanderthals were eating nearly triple that amount. And get this, isotopic analysis of Neanderthal remains shows they were hypercarnivores. That means roughly 70% of their massive caloric intake came from meat alone. They weren't just eating meat with their vegetables on the side. They were eating meat and then eating more meat with maybe some plants as garnish. Their entire diet revolved around hunting, killing, and consuming large animals. And their teeth? They weren't just for eating. Neanderthal jaws and teeth were massive, and for a long time, scientists thought this meant they had crushing bite force. But when studies actually measured their bite strength, it came in around 700 newtons. Strong, but only in the upper range of what modern humans can produce. So why the huge teeth and jaws? One fascinating theory suggests that Neanderthal teeth essentially functioned as a third hand. Evidence shows wear patterns on their front teeth that don't align with eating or chewing. They align with gripping and manipulating objects. Researchers believe Neanderthals would clamp objects between their teeth to hold them steady, freeing up both hands for other tasks. It's like having a built-in vice grip in your mouth. The chunky teeth weren't just for eating, they were tools in their own right. Now, with their incredible lung capacity, you might think Neanderthals were marathon runners who could chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. But here's a plot twist. They were actually terrible at long-distance running. Neanderthals were sprinters, built for explosive bursts of speed rather than endurance. Multiple biological features point to this. Their toes were longer and wider, allowing them to maintain ground contact longer and generate more power in their starts. Their leg bones were relatively short, the opposite of what you see in modern endurance athletes who have longer legs for extended strides. Even their Achilles tendons were long and narrow, not ideal for storing the elastic energy needed for distance running. But the real proof comes from something invisible to the naked eye: their muscle fiber composition. Humans have different types of muscle fibers: fast twitch fibers for explosive power and slow twitch fibers for endurance. Modern humans have a mixture of both. Neanderthals also had a mixture, but with a significantly higher concentration of fast twitch fibers. This makes perfect sense for their hunting strategy. They needed short bursts of incredible speed to close the distance with dangerous prey, not the ability to jog for hours. They were ambush predators, not persistence hunters. So if Neanderthals ever came back and challenged you to a race, definitely suggest a marathon instead of a sprint. It's your only hope. Despite all this brawn, Neanderthals weren't dumb brutes. In fact, they had significantly larger brains than modern humans. Male Neanderthal brain cases averaged 1,640 cubic centimeters, while females averaged 1,460 cubic centimeters. That's about 30% larger than contemporary human brains. Now, size isn't everything when it comes to intelligence, but it's a pretty good indicator that Neanderthals were far smarter than early researchers gave them credit for. Evidence shows they could coordinate complex hunts, create sophisticated tools, produce art, care for sick and injured members of their group, and communicate effectively. These were intelligent, social beings with rich cultural lives. But here's the thing. Their brains were structured differently than ours. They were more circular and bomb-like in shape, and they devoted larger portions of brain matter to processing certain senses, particularly smell and vision. Why? Because Neanderthal eyes were massive. Based on eye socket measurements, their eyes were approximately 15% larger than ours. This would have given them significantly better vision, especially in low light conditions. Better night vision means better hunting at dawn and dusk when prey is most active. But processing all that visual information requires serious brain power, which explains why they needed those huge brains. Despite not necessarily being smarter than us, they were just processing more sensory data. So after learning all this, you might be wondering if you're one of the many people with Neanderthal DNA. Most non-African populations have between 1 to 4%. Does that mean you've got super strength or night vision or incredible durability? Well, probably not in any dramatic way. Most studies suggest Neanderthal DNA in modern humans has only subtle effects on things like athletic performance and physical appearance. The genetic influence is there, but it's been diluted over thousands of generations. That said, some emerging research suggests Neanderthal DNA might have more significant impacts on our internal systems than we initially thought. Things like immune responses, metabolism, and even susceptibility to certain diseases. But this research is still developing, and scientists are still debating just how impactful that ancient DNA really is. Look, at the end of the day, Neanderthals were legitimately built differently. They were shorter than us, but heavier. They were stronger than Olympic powerlifters without training. They could hold their breath longer than professional athletes. They needed to eat enough food to feed 3 people. They were, in every sense of the term, freaks of nature, and I mean that with the utmost respect and awe. So the next time someone tries to use Neanderthal as an insult, maybe remind them that Neanderthals were actually incredible specimens of human evolution who thrived in one of the harshest periods in Earth's history through sheer biological excellence. Thanks for watching, and remember, somewhere in your DNA there might just be a little bit of prehistoric superhuman waiting to come out, though probably not enough to bench press 500 pounds. Sorry. Until next time, stay curious, and maybe don't try to fight a woolly mammoth with a stick.